The Writ Wit Podcast.
Wow, what talent, David. It's like you split into four people on a barbershop quartet with yourself. How do you do it?
Well, technology is magical.
You know, that's probably as good of an excuse as any. I mean, let's be real. Total bullshit. But I'll accept it for now. I'm sorry. Total bull crap. There we go. Now I'll censor out the first one. God, I'm a potty mouth. All right. Welcome, fellow nerds, to another episode of the Writ Wit, the show about the pen, the paper, the text document, the page count, the red lines underneath misspelled words, and the most revolutionary invention in writing history, even more so than the printing press, the backspace button. We do not envy those who had to write on typewriters, do we, David?
Not one bit, I assure you of that.
I can't imagine. Like, I love being able to write stuff and just being like, I don't have to keep any of this. Backspace. It's great.
It is true, because especially when you get really fast and you don't correct things. And back with a typewriter, they didn't have autocorrect. At least now there's a chance, a non-zero
I can't imagine.
chance.
You have this thing, you spent like an hour typewriting it, and you're like, I'm like, wait, that's not how you spell that. I'm like, damn it!
Why, God, why?
And this was like relatively recently too. Like relatively fairly recently.
Oh, that's where you were going. Okay.
Yeah, fairly and relatively. Anyway, so my dad, he had to write his college papers that way.
Yes. You have to go through like 17 drafts just to fix all your typos.
And like the trash can would have a bunch of rolled up paper
flowing over the top of it. Yes.
Yeah. Anyways.
But back to our usual programming, which is not complaining about the typewriter, which we never had to use. But
thank God.
What things are the Writ Wit people ripping off from this month?
Right, yes, this month, not this week. I can never get that clear, so thank you for doing it for me, David.
You're welcome, Donald. Anyway.
Alright, anyways. So, last week, I brought up Moana.
Last week?
Forgot 2 seconds ago.
So last time,
thank you, I just avoided it entirely. I watched Moana, and I said I would talk more about it in depth later. So this is that moment. I really liked it. I still really liked it. However, the point that I brought up, the end, the thing that bothered me way more than it should have, I brought it up to a bunch of other people, and they all said a few things. First off, I'm an idiot. Second off, that was the entire point. So, spoiler alert for Moana. At the very end, spoiler for like 30 seconds or so.
All right.
At the very end, she put a seashell on top of a bunch of rocks that would show that, and because their tradition was they put a rock on top of the mountain in order to keep the generational line going. So like you're now the highest part of this mountain, right? Now she at the end puts a seashell instead of a rock, and at first I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Now no one can put anything on top of it. Like I said, structural issues with the exact wording I said. But people brought up that was entirely the point, because at the end they all go sailing off the island and explore and become voyagers again. And so I was
which
like, well,
means that they can create new piles of rock in other places
right.
if they want to become sedentary again. Right.
So, and third off, I'm an idiot. So those are the three things they brought up.
You already covered that in the first point, I think. But anyway.
It was so relevant that they had to say it twice.
I was going to guess my next guess, but anyway.
Alright, so I also, for the hell of it, I watched Ferngully on Netflix. I saw it was on Netflix. I was like, I haven't seen this. It's been almost 20 years, probably. I was not expecting it to be good. I was expecting it to be like, oh, why did I like this? But it's actually surprisingly holds up really well. Like, one thing I liked about it was that a lot of people hate it. It's like, oh, environmentalism. And I'm like, I'm sorry you don't like the planet. Although
I was about to say, that's not a bad thing to hate, necessarily.
What? It's a bad thing it's not a bad thing to hate environmentalism?
Sorry, the planet being a bad, not it's a good thing to not
just
hate.
dig yourself deeper. No, anyways, I do think it's funny in an ironic sort of way that it's a hand-drawn animated film and it's all about the evils of the logging industry. Where do we get paper from?
I was about to make the joke. What about all those edits? The drawings didn't work and they had the overflowing trash cans, kind of like our typewriter drafts from earlier.
You know, maybe they recycled all of it. I don't know.
Oh, maybe.
Anyways, so one thing I was surprised about though, like there's a thing that a lot of kids movies do back in the day, especially like ones that aren't from the big hitters like Don Bluth or Disney. Like they never shut up because they don't want to bore the kids. But this movie didn't really follow that. Like there was a lot of quieter moments, like a lot of moments that was just atmospheric and it was just like showing good ambiance and then like the majesticness of this magical jungle with the little fairies and such. And Robin Williams nails it, of course. Oddly enough, I found out this came out a few months before Aladdin, so it's kind of funny.
I suppose that's not terribly surprising.
Of course, there's a lot of lines I could tell that he was improvised. Like at one point at the end, while he's carrying this little human that has been shrunk away, he's like, there's humans like, wait, go back, and then Batty with Robin Williams like, go back? Are you crazy? That's lemming talk. And I'm like, that's really funny. I can tell he probably just improvised that.
I wouldn't be surprised given his history as a stand-up comedian.
Right, like he did that a lot for Aladdin. He just improvised a lot of lines. It must have been hours of cut stuff. But anyways,
that would have been funny as heck, but not exactly helpful to the movie.
Right, and also there's a few things I did not notice as a kid. I'm like, oh, that's what they're going for as an adult. Like at one point, there's a scene in the middle where like he and the fairy are like they're having a romantic moment. There's a '90s pop song playing, so they kiss, and then it's revealed that when she looks down, it's revealed that they're both flying at this point. I'm like, oh, something else is rising. I think that's what they were going
Peter
for.
Pan.
Right, but I don't think that's what they were going for. Or maybe it was.
Remember their target audience. They have to appeal
right,
to
but
the
so
larger demographic, not only them, but also the others too.
When you're a kid, you see that like, oh, it's like Peter Pan, or he's so in love that he's flying. But if you're an adult, you're like, oh, it's his penis. Just to be blunt.
Jeez, maybe we should censor that one for the kids. Anyway.
No, I put my foot down. That one is fine. You have a problem with it, then stop being such a prude.
Well, all right.
At least I said its technical term and not like one of those slang words.
All right, I'll give you that credit. As if you really needed credit for such a thing. But
anyways, that's what I've ripped off this month. What have you ripped off? Or
what you will rip off. I'm curious what you're going to rip off about Ferngully. You didn't really say what you're going to rip off about it, either of the two.
You missed the point of the segment of the show. It's just a funnier way of us to say, what have we watched this month?
Okay. Then in that case, I'm actually using it for what it says it means, which is to say that I actually am taking an idea.
Wait, did you just get that's why we call it that? You do actually think...
Well, I was being more literal. It's the thing that I tend to do anyway.
Okay, fine. I'll rip off both of them. I'll rip off the sense of atmosphere they both have because that's a good thing to do, especially like a fantasy or sci-fi writer. Anyways,
all right. Well, in my case, I'm watching a new Sentai series. This is the one about imagination and trains, and it's called ToQGer. If you're interested, go ahead and look it up. But the short version is they have 5 warriors who are capable of changing colors basically freely through this mechanic they call line changes. So they have their own personal train. They usually transform into this color first, and the number designation is on their suit. But they have the ability to use any of the other trains and change colors between red, blue, yellow, green, and pink in numerical order. Okay. But it retains
trains
the
like
number...
choo-choo trains?
Well,
like locomotives?
Yes, locomotives.
Like Thomas the Tank Engine?
No, not like Thomas the Tank Engine. But anyways.
Like bullet trains?
They do reference the Shinkansen because remember this came from Japan.
Right, okay.
So, anyway, they have this ability to change the color on their suits. And it's simply by changing the train they use to put in their morphing device. And it's really interesting because they keep the number designation, but like the helmet and the aesthetic changes to match the suit of the color they're wearing. So the color designs are distinct, but the numbers are obviously the way you tell who's wearing which color, which is kind of cool. But, it's one of those things that it inspired me a little bit. I have a newer idea that I'm working on. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a bit. That I am using in the next segment that we'll get to. But the idea that the color doesn't necessarily match what you see.
Right.
They use this line change mechanic to kind of trick people. Sometimes, like, there was an episode I watched recently where the one character had all 5 of the trains, and he was making the enemy think that they were all together, but really it was just him swapping out and changing colors and using the different weapons that come with a colored suit and whatnot. It was a really interesting moment. However, I'm turning it on its head a little bit. I'll give this much away about the upcoming thing, and I'll talk more about that as well, is that the villains have names based on colors, and some of them are obvious, others are not, but they aren't actually that color.
Ruby. What? Yep, sorry, go on. I'm sorry.
But they aren't actually that color. Ironically, you guessed 2 of the ones I actually have named. But anyway.
All the Pokemon colors.
Not all the Pokemon colors.
Sapphire.
No,
Pearl.
because there are too many Pokemon colors to use. But anyway, the idea is that even though...
Y. Sorry, go on.
Even though you see in their name one color, they don't look that color. If you could make the association, it would not look correct. So, like, the one example
sounds confusing.
Well, that's kind of the joke.
Oh, okay.
I'm using it for a bit of a gag, but also because, it's kind of funny and it's inspired by this idea of line changes. However, unlike ToQGer, where they can swap midstream, mid-battle, the villains obviously won't. It's simply the starting point that I used for, it doesn't matter if they actually match their name. So, like, the one that I did use Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, not because of the 3rd generation of Pokemon, but because of the gemstone thing.
Ah, yes.
And so, like, their names are based on colors, but the appearance is actually switched.
Okay.
So it's supposed to be confusing. But anyway, that's what I'm ripping off for this month.
Sounds good. You get on that.
Well, I'll tell you more about it, but moving on to the next segment, which is what we at the Writ Wit have writ.
Thank you for saying it, because I would have messed it up so easily. We've missed this for the last 2 episodes. I completely forgot. I apologize, y'all.
Y'all, because
my sincerest apologies. I just don't know how I'll be able to make it up for you. Oh, that's right. I'll just do it this time. Well, here I've written more on the... Okay, I'm not going to do that the whole time.
Please.
I've written more on the Megazoic sequel, which I'm not going to reveal now, because the first book isn't out yet, although it's really, really close. Like, as of right now, it's being approved by Amazon, their little editor squad thing. It's more just make sure the formatting is all up to snuff. And any minute now, they should be like, oh, it's ready to go, or you need to fix this. And it's getting very close here. The book itself, the text, the pictures, the editing, the spell checks, it's all completely done.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that, but I'm really sad that we couldn't use that as a segue into our main topic. However...
Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry.
No,
I'll bring it back up once we get to it. Anyway, so I worked more on the sequel. I'm really I don't want to say much, but
well, of course, you don't want to spoil anything.
It's going good. Thumbs up for progress.
Hey, progress is always nice. Anything else related to your stuff that you've been working on? Because obviously you have a couple of other stories that are pretty important.
Right.
Maybe not the one you're trying to get published right now.
Unfortunately, not really as much right now, just because I'm trying to focus on that. I do have plans in the future for it, but I'll talk about that in future episodes.
I want to throw out, this is talking about what we've writ, not what we're writing soon.
Right, what we plan to writ.
What we plan to writ? No, that doesn't work. But anyway.
What we at the Writ Wit plan to writ.
Hey, there you go. You managed to say that correctly, too. But I hear there's a website that this podcast, amongst other things, is accessible at. Have you managed to...
Oh, right. That's right. I forgot. No, it's okay. I do. Yeah, I have a website. We'll mention it at the end of the podcast, too, but it's www.matthewdonaldcreator, all one word, .com. I guess it is all one word.
That aren't one word.
It's a URL. It's always all one
word.
My apologies. But it's my website. You can go to it. You can go say, hey.
You can download us.
You can download us. That's probably currently the only way you can download us. Once I get my book out there, and once I advertise this site more, like through like ads and such, I'm probably going to put this on iTunes. Is that okay with you?
this is so sudden. I didn't think we were getting that serious. Well,
I mean, what else are we gonna do with this? I mean, you know what?
Maybe we should edit that part out. I don't know, but anyway,
You don't know. Come on, don't. What are you, miserable little caterpillar? Don't you want to become a butterfly?
don't you want to spread your wings and flap your way to glory? No.
Yes, you do. Enough of that attitude. Okay, well, we'll talk about it after the podcast.
Apparently, we need to get on the same page about this. No, I'm just kidding. But we'll
Okay,
talk
well,
about it
anyways,
later.
point is, though, so you can go to the website, you can see the podcast, you can see information on this book, my Megazoic, or and some of my other writing. I have Newbies of Valhalla on there. It's a script format
talked
sort of
about
thing.
that
You can,
before, yeah.
You can download it for free
Ooh.
right now, the whole thing, just because right now I'm more focused on getting my name out there than money.
That is probably a good thing to think about.
Yeah, so it's all in the PDF form. It's all ready to go. You can contact us. Which
Yeah,
we'll
if you
talk
have
about more.
suggestions for... we'll talk about that at the end.
Well, I guess we can just bring it up now. It's fine.
Well, sure,
so-
but like, if you have any criticism for us... There's another bad segue to miss. If you have
Hold
any
your
comments...
horses.
if you have any concerns, if you have any suggestions for things you want us to talk about, that'd be awesome. Because, like, we've come up with all of the... content for this so far, but we'd love to hear from our listeners and see if there's anything they really want us to tackle, and if we have a legit shot of doing it, why not?
Right, not exactly. And if we're on iTunes, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, we'll have more listeners too.
Well, theoretically, but it's one podcast amongst a million, but
well, I guess we'll have no listeners ever then with your attitude.
I didn't say that.
It'll be just you and me and my mother. Hi, Mom.
I'll pay you later. Anyway.
Anyways. Okay.
All right. Well, I guess I'll talk a little bit about the things that I've written in the last approximate month or so. There are three primary things that I'm working on right now. Well, I should say worked on. The first was actually a suggestion from my podcast co-host Donald over there, who gave me an idea to do a different story in the universe that we have our alter egos in. We call them the AE type crew, and so rather than telling a story from the same perspective and it's just a random one-off adventure, the suggestion from Donald was to tell about somebody else observing us, and so that became a story. I kind of liked it. The main character's name was Cedrian. I wish I could tell you more, but I don't have the time. I will say that it was really interesting to write, and it was one of those things that it was a very refreshing way to focus on the characters from a different angle, which I've never really done with those characters before, so that was kind of fascinating.
Well, happy to have helped.
Yeah, that was a wonderful suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing that I have with a co-author, not Matthew Donald here, but I have a friend. Sorry, it happens.
Just like Cain and Abel. Well, I'm referencing producers all the time.
I noticed.
You pulled a sneak attack. I thought that we were brothers.
And then you stabbed me in the back. I love
Betrayed. All right, sorry, go on.
I have a co-author on this one fic I've probably mentioned before called Starburst, and we're working on a multi-part multi-part arc right now. And so managed to add an episode to that, and I've just seen his and made edits on that, and so we're trying to tie it together, and it's progressing. I mean, we've already got 26 episodes done in that show, which is amazing considering we've really never published it anywhere yet. That's probably the next step, so long as... Well, right, we're writing for ourselves, but the eventual point is to find some place where we can get reviews, and at this point, if we were just more regular about writing it, that we could already have done so because we wouldn't worry about falling behind on content. Saying that, that's still a work in progress, but that's one of the biggest things that I've been working on the past time since our last episode. However, I mentioned them earlier because I talked about the color swapping thing, and that is to say I've been planning a new fic, a new Power Rangers. Well, it might be, it might not be. I still haven't decided that yet. But using that framework as a starting point and then trying to make it my own. And the brief elevator pitch for it is that a bunch of a bunch of humanoid aliens from
Sorry, I'm doing
a
the
new
elevator
planet. Yes, I noticed.
Okay.
Another planet come to Earth to stop this villain that managed to destroy their planet, and they find one guy on Earth who's dumb enough to join up with them and try to stop the same thing from happening to Earth. And I've been doing a lot of planning and doing plot points and stuff like that, and it's been really fun doing that concept work. Obviously, I haven't really started the writing process just yet, but I'm really hoping, because of how excited I've been, that should come pretty soon. So maybe next month you'll hear about me having a couple episodes done. Who knows?
Right, that sounds good. Planning the concept is always super fun. Like, that's why a lot of writers don't actually get a lot done, because they have all these plans, and then they get to the blank page, and they're like, ugh, I can't do it.
Well, I mean, looking at a blank page is always a pain, unless you have a strong idea and write something down.
And if you want help on that, listen to episode 3, starting, continuing, and finishing a story.
What a cheap plug. Love it.
At least I'm blunt about it and honest about it.
I was about to say, it's nice that you remember which episode it was. I know we talked about it, but it's not like I remember, oh, this is episode whatever we talked about. But anyway,
well,
that's
if only I had your lack of memory. Oh, wait, what am I talking about? I'm a goldfish. Anyway.
I was about to say, roles have reversed. But you're trying to get your name out, so of course you're remembering more about the stuff that you've done. Anyway, that's what I, from the Writ Wit, have writ this month. Okay,
sorry, yes, of course. That is what we at the Writ Wit have writ. Blah, blah. I failed that time. Anyways.
It's okay. If you're shooting 30%, you're all right.
Anyway, so for our topic for this month...
Yes, so we talked a little bit about your upcoming book, but...
Right, Megazoic. It's going to be out on Amazon, and I'm going to be entirely honest, listeners, I'm scared crapless. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm terrified. Like, this has been my dream for a long time, and the fact that it's finally coming to life, you think I'd be excited, and of course I am, but I'm also terrified, because, like, at this point, it's not just something I can daydream about and be, like, imagine an idealistic sort of vision in my head of how it'll be. This is going to be reality, and there'll be people out there who are going to read it who I don't know, and will have no bias, and not all of them are going to like it. And honestly, I don't know if anyone's going to like it. No, surely someone's going to like it. But
you'll find
there's always the risk.
Will. Yep. And you're putting a part of yourself out there, right?
Right. And also, my book is weird enough. Like, it's an odd enough concept. I think it's going to work in its favor, but I could be wrong. Like, I just don't know until I do it, and I'm really terrified. But there's one way to pressure on and find out. But one of the things I'm terrified about is the feedback. Like, people who have no bias to me are going to read it and be like, or, you know, whatever one is positive or negative, you know?
Whichever one is which.
Whichever.
But yes, with that wonderful segue, thank you, we are going to talk about criticism today. Not just criticism, but how to deal with it, and maybe even how to give it, too, you know?
Right, maybe.
We'll talk about a little bit. Anyway,
like feedback in general, basically.
Right.
Good or bad.
So, to help with this process, we do need to define criticism a little bit, just based on a little list that I have here. There are a bunch of different kinds, like constructive criticism, there is destructive criticism, there is quote-unquote honest criticism, there is positive, there is negative, and finally, edits in their own way are a form of criticism, so I included them.
Right.
Do you think I missed anything?
I don't know. In terms of criticism, no. I think, like, there's one thing to keep in mind. Like, you have positive and negative. Sure. In that sort of regard, there's two of them that you probably should learn. We'll get to it, but, like, to just ignore. Ones that are, like, biasedly positive and biasedly negative, like, and we'll get to those later. The point is, like, sometimes you need to learn whether not to let something go to your head because they're being unreasonable in how good you are, or at the same time, you don't let it get you down because they're being unreasonable in how bad you are. So.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're going for. All right, so
right.
The first one, I'm just taking it as I listed them. So the first one is constructive criticism, and I just want to make a note. Remember, constructive criticism is being offered from a place they want you to get better. They are not like attacking you personally.
Yep.
For
don't
what
get
you
offended.
Did wrong.
Right. They're trying to help you know what to do better next time. Like, they're trying to help you improve because they see potential and they just think it could be a little bit better. That's the thing. It's a compliment, not an insult. It seems like it might be an insult. Don't take it as one. It's not.
That can be difficult too. No,
it sucks. Like I can understand. I've went through it like crazy. Like,
well, and the thing is, we naturally get defensive because it's a part of us. You know, it's any artist, be they the artist of words, be they an artist of paintings, be they an artist of music. You know, every time we put something out there that's so personal, it's a part of us, and so anytime people don't like it, we kind of take it as, well, you don't like the way I do it because you don't like me, kind of a thing.
Or you're just saying this whole story is completely flawed. No, they're not. They're just saying this one part could be a little bit better.
Yeah, and there are a bunch of individual bits. Constructive criticism tends to be a lot smaller in nature. It's smaller in scope because they're referring to specific things. So there's one easy way to identify it.
Right, and like you have to learn just not take it personally, because like I was in a college class, it was like a workshop story sort of thing, and whenever they reviewed my story, I was just terrified. And a lot of times I was reading, it was like, ugh, they hated it, but they didn't. They were just giving me advice. Like a lot of them, like I remember at one point when they first did my first story for that class, I was there, they were talking about it, and one of the things, you could not say a word while they were workshopping it because they knew you'd get defensive. At the end, afterwards, the professor would ask us, do you have any thing to say, like any comments to add about what people have said?
Oh, so you get a chance to defend yourself. It's just after they already said everything.
Right, and usually you don't have too long because, the class is almost over. But, and plus, they want to make sure
it sounds like it'd be a nerve-wracking class, but it sounds like it was so productive, It helped.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But when I did my first story, I was hearing the criticism, and I was like, oh god, they hate it. Like, I felt so bad. Like, I just assumed everyone hated it. But then, as well as like them talking about it in class, they also write out their comments for it. And they give they make two copies, one for the professor and one for the writer. So,
or they probably just made one, and she might have copied it for you. But anyway,
no, I mean you're supposed to have two copies ready when you talk about the specific story in class. So
gotcha.
So you print it twice. Anyways, so when I read my comments for mine, the written ones, I found out that a lot of people really did like it. They were just pointing out what was wrong. And to be fair, that was the whole point of the class. The whole point was for criticism. So
if I were actually a creative writing major kind of guy, that would be a great class to take. But obviously I had other things in mind. But, that does, in that class especially, you have to be careful about towing the line between building them up to make them better, and bringing them down. And I use that to talk about destructive criticism. It's not advice.
I have a story.
It's just shredding your effort. Oh, you worked so hard on it. I couldn't tell. Oh, it was such a big effort for you, right? No, it sucked. Go away. You're horrible. You're stupid. I mean, that's definitely more of a personal attack type of criticism.
And this is more what I was talking about. Like, you need to learn to just let this go. Clearly, they have a problem with you, not so much the story.
Well, maybe they have a great problem. Maybe they do have a huge problem with your story, and by association, they take that to mean you. But
the problem they probably have the story is something from their own preconceived notions about. It's like if someone said to mine, I hate this because dinosaurs are poo-poo, and I'm like, well, I guess it wasn't for you then.
I just can't help but imagine somebody who's our age talking like that and wonder, geez, when did you never grow up or something?
When did you grow? Not only did you not grow up, but you somehow got a job in professional criticism.
Well, that's the other thing that we need to point out while we're at it. A lot of the people who are going to give feedback are not professionals. You talked about the class that you were in, and there are people, excuse my grammar, in there who are trying to do the same thing you are. They want to put themselves out on a limb for the hope that somebody gives them advice how to get better.
Right, absolutely.
That's as close as you can get to professional without being professional. But you've all seen or heard about internet trolling and stuff. It's real, folks. It is such a problem.
They find ways to attack you personally. You just gotta let it go. They have issues on their own, and they're just taking them out on you. But sort of like that. At one point in this class, college was stressful. I'll admit it. It was stressful. I was depressed quite a bit. I had no friends because I'm a loner and I'm a weirdo. Right now, I'm just at the point where I'm proud of it, and so therefore I'm automatically just getting friends because people see I'm more comfortable with myself. So, anyways, so at one point I was really stressed out about something else. I was reading this story in this class. It was very sad, very dark, It was probably fine. It was probably written well. It probably did its job. But I shredded it because I was just mad at myself for random things. I will never forget. I crushed this poor girl. I feel so bad about it now. If you're listening, I don't even remember your name, but maybe they'll be listening and they'll hear it and they'll be like, and then they'll hear, because they might remember me. They probably have a face of me that they throw darts at.
You published that many pictures?
I mean, they copied the one from my website, which you can find at MatthewDonaldCreator.com.
Which you didn't have back then, might I add.
No, they've been looking. They've been Googling, making sure. Anyway, trying to find the day. Or they have a voodoo doll of me. Anyways,
yeah.
It's not working, by the way. I'm still alive. Anyways.
I was about to say, do you have random aches and pains that you can't explain? No. Anyway.
Maybe. But anyways.
Moving on.
That might just be gas, but anyway. Anyway, so I'm so sorry, this college students, that I said your story is terrible, and the only thing to fix it would be to start over. Why did I say that? There's no way to fix it. It's too broken. Just start over. Those are my words.
Oh boy, that is brutal. I would have had a problem. You're like my best friend. If I heard you say that, I would get pretty pissed.
We probably wouldn't be friends anymore. And
well, maybe it'd take a while, but we're too odd. We have to stick together. Anyways, so that's a great example of destructive criticism, but again,
right. And again, an example
of
you need to learn how to not just how to take criticism, also to give it. Don't give it like that. Learn from my failure.
Learn from your elders, children. Anyway,
yep, because we're better than you. So we had to. Right. We were at one point we were as good as you, and we had to figure out ways to be better.
Right. Through constructive criticism. Maybe.
Yeah, sure.
Anyway, we'll move on to the next one, and that is what I called honest criticism. I just want to point out that it's really difficult to offer advice if you don't properly understand the story or if you just don't care to know, right?
Right. Like, you need to learn the difference between honest and biased. Just sometimes there are things that you need to say that, yeah, you're right, they're hard to offer, but, like, sometimes you have to give them. Like, so, there's a story I wrote back in the day called Wildlife of Tomorrow. I might do something more with it in the future. I don't know, but you heard it here first if I do. But anyway, so I wrote the first book, and I wrote the second book, and I was writing the second book, and I was planning it for it to be the end, and I won't really say why. I don't want to get into the details.
You were planning for it to be the end?
I was planning it for it to be the end until the final chapter. Where I was like, you know what? I think I'm gonna write a little bit more. Then I wrote this super obvious sequel hook, and then David here read this. Yeah, and it ended the book, and I think it actually said to be continued in Wildlife of Tomorrow 3. And then David read this and said, like, Donald, stop. just use that famous backspace key that we love so much. And then rewrite that. And I'm like, fine. So, no Wild for Tomorrow 3, that's honest advice. Biased advice is no Wild for Tomorrow, period, because the idea is dumb, they would say.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, bias kind of works both ways. It can be negative bias, it can be positive bias. Like you were mentioning in your class how because your own internal stuff was getting in the way of your criticism. It kind of created a negative bias hearing this story that was negative, right?
Right, exactly, yeah.
The story that was tearing everything down and the whole world was going asunder. Well, I don't know the contents of the story, but the idea that your experiences created a negative bias, and so that's where you responded from. Right,
absolutely. And also, like, if someone in my class said like a particularly scathing review towards mine, I remembered their name, and I remembered when it was their turn.
Did you actually do that?
No, but I
okay.
Sort of, not actively.
Not actively. All right, fair enough.
But
I mean,
except for that one poor girl, I usually was honest. I'm like, I begrudgingly admit if it was a good story. So
begrudgingly, come on, you should be encouraging them. I mean, that's the whole point of criticism, right?
I'm human. I have flaws.
All right, that's fair. And I do too, just to make sure you're not trying to be...
Massive flaws.
I'm not trying to, like, prove superiority, because I do have flaws. But my point is this...
Someone should shoot me.
Can we get back to
with a camera,
please?
So then put it on my website at MatthewDollarCreator.com. Please don't throw darts at it.
God, I wish this were a video because, like, then you could do that stupid little, like, counter in the corner thing about how many goddamn plugs he's thrown in for the headset.
And then if it was
already.
a video, I could be like, do it today, and then I'd do like a wink, and then it'd be a wink.
and then you'd hear the effect, and the text would scroll out on the screen. But anyway,
Anyway. All right.
But positive bias can be a thing too, right?
Right, absolutely.
I mean, this is why. Well, we'll talk a bit more about how to get feedback, what kinds of people you need to talk to, because you've all seen this people. We call them yes men, or I prefer the technical term a sycophant. Anything.
I prefer kiss ass. I'm going to be blunt.
All right, that's blunt. But anyway, it's one of those things that's like, oh, everything you do is fantastic. You don't need to fix anything. You're so wonderful, magical. It's great.
Nice lisp. That really adds to the kiss-assery of it.
I think in my line of work we call it brown nosing, and I think I just went into a pile of anyway. It's just not helpful. Sure, it builds you up because it makes you feel better, and we need that encouragement, right?
Right.
But
So
how does it help you write?
Right. You shouldn't always ignore those. If you need an ego boost, read over it, but just don't get too much of an ego boost from it. So,
well, that's something else that some people are going to struggle with because a lot of us put inordinate value in what other people think of us, and it's a natural thing to do. But here's the issue: is that those can't help you with writing. They may help you feel better about yourself, and it might make you write more, but it doesn't help your writing get better. Which obviously there is no substitute for actually practicing, right?
Right.
But criticism from other people can help you get better without as much practice. It's a quick way to get there if it's offered from a good place. If it's offered honestly. But here's actually, you mentioned the honesty thing, and it's a little different tack than I was thinking, because when I was thinking about honest criticism, I was kind of thinking about I'm not really into this kind of thing, but here's what I can offer. I'll mention...
okay.
Well, and no, you're correct, because that's a kind of it as well. But like the thing that I think of, there's a guy on one of the forums that Donald created. We'll talk a little bit more about that, not the site, but we'll talk a little bit more about that too, I think.
Eventually.
And he puts this stuff up on this forum that is so expansive, and all of the mental capital that he puts into it. It's a heck of a project. It's daunting to me because I'm just not interested in it.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I was talking about
I know you're talking. I was like, oh, well, thank you. Why put all this effort? Oh, wait, you're not into it? Oh, wait, you're not talking about me. That was a roller coaster of emotions there, David.
You're welcome. It's like most criticism in a nutshell. But anyway.
Anyways, yeah, so exactly. I see that and like, wow, yeah, he put a hell of a lot of effort. Like, and he found me on Facebook, and he's been messaging that to me as well. And also, and I'm like, wow, how do you do it? I also told him to bother you, by the way. I linked your profile picture to him. You're welcome in hindsight. Or I'm sorry in hindsight. Or not hindsight.
Not going to say it because who knows who's listening. But anyway. But every time that he puts something new up, and I try to read it because I care about the work he's putting in.
And
but not about the stuff that he's writing.
Right. Like, I don't know what to say other than, yeah, you put a lot of effort into it. Good job. Thumbs up.
Right, and so trying to find something to criticize when you don't really understand what he's trying to say. It's not my cup of tea, but I can't just tell him it's not my cup of tea and then offer nothing in advice, So I always try. As difficult as it is for me, it's not like I can't read it,
I see.
And so that kind of honest criticism, that kind of...
So you went hard to offer as in, like, you don't know what's going on. I thought you meant hard to offer as in, like, oh, should I really be this brutal about it? But I probably should. They need to know it. That's how I thought you were wording that there. But
well, and it's another kind of it, too. But being honest with yourself as a reviewer is just as important.
I see.
Because you don't... I mean, I'd hate to be a writer that sends a story to one of his good buddies, and the good buddy doesn't give a whip for it.
Right.
He doesn't care at all. And he just says, oh, well, it's fine the way it is. But did they really offer that from a place of where they knew what it was going on because they actually took the time to make it help you get better? Or are they just doing it to appease you because you asked them to help?
Yeah. Well, it depends on how good of a friend they are, I guess.
Well,
Anyways.
and I usually try to put a bunch of effort into it. Of course, the other complaint I have about his stuff is that because he puts so much, I never really fully catch up on it, and it's just
fine, I'll read all this. Oh wait, he's added 10 more.
Right,
different
and
chapters.
So it's like text walls are not always fun to read. I'm not expecting him to add
daunting.
pictures, although he does add pictures. But anyway, let's.
At this point, he knows we're
it.
talking about him. By the way, so
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
in which case, I say to you, "Hi, we still love you."
We do care, and it's hopefully not something that makes you angry with us. It's just that that stuff is fascinating to you. That's why you're writing it, but it's not as
and
fascinating
keep doing
to
it.
us. Please. Even
Anyway.
if we're not the right reviewers for it, there is somebody who
We're
will.
definitely not professional reviewers, are we?
Not at all.
And speaking
Anyway.
of which,
Well, can I do positive and negative real quick?
real
quick.
I'm sorry. I tried to force a segment too. I'm segment happy. I'm whatever.
All right, no, it's
segue
fine.
happy. Sorry, go
It's
on.
fine. I noticed. Anyway, positive. Real quick, positive. It's not as helpful for your writing, but it's always a good thing to hear.
Right.
It kind of builds you up.
We talked about
but doesn't
this.
give you. Well, we did, but in short, that it's not as much about something to change in your story as much as it is. Oh, good job! Keep up the good work. Positive
Right.
reviews.
Yes. Good.
Negative reviews, if you can sort the noise from the truth, like, oh, I don't need to listen to that stuff, but that thing I might take into consideration,
Right.
it can be very valuable. However, dealing with it is really difficult.
Absolutely. And if you look back on it later and you're like, oh, you know what, they had a point. You just need to learn to laugh at it. Like, you and I have a lot of stories that were older back in the day, and we look at and we make inside jokes about them. We won't mention them. Or will we? No, we won't. And we're like,
Well,
oh my god, that was crap, right?
Careful. We're about to open a can of worms, but I was going to make a
we
joke
have
about
them.
Metro Maze because it was the two of us. As
Oh, if
opposed
you're
to
bringing
just
up
one or the
Metro
other.
Maze, yeah.
No, but anyway.
We wrote this story called Metro Maze. We liked it at the time, but by God. If you look at it now, I'm like... not me. That was him who did it. That's not about collaborative stories. Actually, no, we can't do it on that one because we actually wrote on each chapter who wrote which chapter.
Did we? I don't remember
Yeah,
that.
I think we did. Okay.
Well, the other thing, the thing that I do recall is that, like, you did a lot of that story before I kind of forced my way into it.
You invited yourself to my little Metro Maze party.
Anyway, not important, but it's just something that was.
If only we had a professional editor to look over it, huh?
Yeah, well, or at least semi-professional.
Is that?
And with
are
that,
we
we
there?
finally get to the last one that was on my list, and that is edits themselves. And obviously, you want somebody who is, well, actually, it doesn't take much in the way of qualification, other than they have to be somewhat proficient at reading and thinking it. How can I make this better, kind of a thing.
Right.
But it's a professional glance, or maybe a semi-professional glance if you don't have the money, over
Like
your
our
hard
parents.
work. They catch most of the silly things, hopefully all of them, but most of the silly things, and some of the bigger things too, like continuity errors and stuff like that.
Right.
I was originally going to ask Donald about his own experience. You could probably talk about the experience, but the book that you had edited is not yet out. But it's
I can
very
talk a little
close.
bit.
Do you
as
want to
well.
talk about?
I talked about a little bit about this in the starting, continuing, and finishing episode 3. Go back. Anyways, but don't be scared of an editor. They're not there to change the story. Like, they're there to change change little things about it. The publishers are more the ones that would worry about the plot. Don't worry about that with editors. Editors would be like, okay, this doesn't work, continuity errors here and this. I met up with my editor. I haven't seen her in person, but she went to the same college that I did. I will see her in person because I'm going to that college to have an event promoting this book. I think the English department's going to help me sort it out. And since
why are you going back to your college to have them promote the book, Matthew Donald?
Where am I?
Well, I mean, you were the one who was so proud of, like, how the author, the illustrator, and the editor.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Like, we're all there, right? So I'm going to meet her there. But anyways, she's really nice. I've talked to her over the phone about other things, but she's also very professional about it. She lets me know when this doesn't work or what I could do better about this. And I signed a contract and stuff, and paid her bit by.
So
and
official.
She looked over it twice. First one was just to get a good feel of it. Well, no, she looked over it 3 times, but there were 2 different edits. First was like the bigger changes. and such, and things that she could say could improve about it. And then she gave it to me. I implemented them. She looked over it again, and those were just typos and such. But the first time she read it was before either of that, where she could just get the feel of the pacing and the story itself. So,
and a lot of that too. I have to mention this because we're talking about editing now. Remember that if it's a personal effort, if it's a project that you're doing for you, there is always an option. You do not need to accept any edits. That isn't always advisable, but there are places in which you have the authority to say, you know what, I'm keeping it the way it was. Right.
Well, there's some stories that you don't really plan for anyone but you to read them. We don't get into details because we probably don't want to hear them.
Future world.
Anyways. Well, yeah, that one. But
you did hear it. I wasn't sure.
Outsourcing for feedback is always nice.
Oh, fine. I was going to try and make the segue, but you can go ahead and do it, I guess.
I rule the segment train, bitch. No, I'm just kidding. I'm bringing... Okay, hey, by the way, any kids listening to it, just don't copy anything I say. Except for my advice.
Please don't.
Listen to my advice. Don't quote me.
Yeah, do as he does. Do as he says, not as he says.
Sure. That's one way to look at it.
Anyway. Outsourcing for feedback. Obviously, you want to have some other eyes look over your work. Your two eyes may work just fine. Hopefully, two. But
hey, no offense to any Cyclopses that listen to our show.
Or glasses wearers that we normally call four eyes. But anyway,
I'm one of them. You guys can't see it, listeners, but I'm raising my glasses and lowering them, like in a sexy sort of way. Anyways, go on.
If we had video. But anyway, because even though your eyes work fine, you're used to the story, and so some parts of it, the minute details of it, tend to escape you. Mm-hmm. You're not looking as closely as somebody else will who's reading it, especially if they're reading for the first time.
Right.
They will see things in a different way.
Yes, they will.
They have different ideas, they have different experiences to bring, and all of them to some degree are valuable. As I said, some degree, some are less than others.
And don't be too afraid to listen to them, because like they could offer like you know what happens in your story. You know all this stuff. They could notice things that you didn't even notice, or at the same time, they could something that you might think is incredibly obvious, they won't even catch. If you have a plot twist in your work and you're afraid it's too obvious because of this, and this, of course it's obvious to you. You wrote it.
Yep.
So don't worry. But at the same time, that's a good gauge for you too. If they don't realize that it's happening until the plot twist happens, like, oh man, that's great, then you're like, you did your job. So
exactly. And those things, you have to play them by ear too. Mm-hmm. But my advice, and this is based on years of, I'm not as serious of a writer as Donald over there, but I have.
We can't all be as serious of a writer as Donald here.
Yeah, but start with your closest friends. I kind of view friendship like a concentric set of rings. The ones the closest to you, the ones who you trust, and you expect that.
Are you calling me a planet, Mister? Well, I guess we're calling all of us a planet. Anyways, we're all a Saturn.
That's the idea, I guess. But anyway, the point being that you want these people to give you their honest opinion, because you can take it from them. They're the ones you're closest to. So if they're going to rip it, those are the people you want ripping it. If they're going to encourage you and give you something to make it better, you can take it from them a lot easier than you can take it from a stranger.
Right.
Your model of friendship may look different than mine. I don't mind, but I want to point out
not
that
all
you
of us
should
can have a sexy glasses-wearing best friend, huh?
But you should start with your closest friends first.
Right. I'm not sexy, by the way, just in case people were concerned.
Because we don't have video, we can't prove anything or disprove.
I mean, okay, imagine me however you want. Oh wait, no, you can't, because of my picture on MatthewDonaldCreator.com, which, by the way, please visit.
Tink.
Okay, imagine David here. Well, some people hear you and think that we say Matt Damon. So
really?
So I'm like, yeah.
Say that?
So you're Matt Damon. Imagine that Matt David here is Matt Damon. So.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
I mean,
please tell me about that afterwards, because anyway, not now.
They don't really think you're Matt Damon. Don't get full of yourself.
No, I'm not. But I'm just amazed that was the connection. But anyway, here's a question for you prospective writers out there: are there online places devoted to creativity that you could use as a forum for your work?
Right.
Do you
Fanfiction,
trust?
there's a reason why fanfiction.net has a comment section.
Do you trust people there enough to let go of your story and receive their feedback?
Right. I used to post my story in a lot of different places, but then I was like, you know what? I'm cluttering other forums. I'm going to put it all in one place. And so I made the forum where we had the guy that has the long stories that we still love. So
We still love the guy, but maybe not love the story. Well,
right.
To be fair,
Hey.
it's not like it's really a story. It's more of like an alternate history kind of a thing. But
yes, exactly. Anyways, so yeah, so I did that, and then it's been really helpful. Like, there's some, and even though they're generally very encouraging, sometimes when I do something and they don't like it, I listen to them, and sometimes they do not like it. Sometimes they look at it and like, wow, what are you thinking? I have
fair.
anyways. So yep, but you got to figure out how much you want to show other people. Like, I post my entire stories a lot of the time. However, including the one I'm about to publish, but once I do, I'm going to get rid of all of that. And and I don't recommend this for a lot of people because I trust these people. I trust they're not going to copy it. Like, if it's on a big forum, you probably should just post snippets. But if it's like a smaller forum, you just have one or two, or like, I guess 6 or so people, or more, but usually less than like 50, and you trust all of them, and you can probably get away posting the whole story as long as you don't post any of the sequels, because at that point, other people might care about what will happen in them, and you don't trust that. You never know that one of them could accidentally get the word out what will happen in the sequel. So only do the first book, and once it's out, get rid of it, just so in case someone Googles it and they find that and like, oh, I can read it for free.
To throw it out there, if you have a personal forum for this stuff, there are probably some things in the forum programming that you can make it like visible or invisible to
guests
people that aren't a member.
Right, like who aren't members, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But yeah, obviously you can show them snippets, you could show them just the climax and get their attention, you could give them only the best chapters, you could give them the worst chapters and farm for suggestions. I mean, you have to figure out how much you want to show, but before you send it, before you post it, have it as polished as you can.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, your idea of polish will be fine, but they're still going to give comments because that's what the purpose of it is that's why you're sending it out. You need to develop a relationship with your regular, I use the term customers here, quote-unquote customers, your family and friends. You need to make sure that they will give you a no BS opinion that could help you make it better.
It's nice it's good for anyone, not just with writing about any business. Like, we're humans, we like social interaction. More people are more willing to help you get forward on your business, whether it be writing, which it better be if you're listening to this podcast, or anything else, if you form a relationship with them. So that way, not just like you sending them their works and they keep saying yes, please keep doing, or like please keep going, or this is my advice. Have them show them some of their work or something. Just something that just show that, like, you guys, even though you're probably the one with bigger aspirations, you two are equal in this relationship. I mean, that's going to be difficult for everyone, but you're better in the long run. Like, on my personal forum, a lot of them who said stuff, they also posted their own stuff. So,
the aforementioned gentleman.
As well as some other people.
I put stuff on there too, but nobody ever bothers to review my stuff. But
I review your stuff. It's great.
Occasionally.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, thanks. Anyway.
I need to have another new criticism other than thumbs up.
But, like, it's one of those things that as you get more popular, you're going to have more people approach you that you probably don't know. Right?
Right.
And whether it's them being inspired by you, whether it's them running an idea past you, if you have the time, why wouldn't you respond to them?
Right. Like, there's really no reason for you to. I mean, I get people like, do I have to? Yes, you do, because that's the best way for you to get people to care about your work. Honestly.
Because you should care about people, not just their stories.
Right. And also, most people are selfish. Let's keep that in mind. They won't really want to care about you if you don't care about them. So,
absolutely.
I mean, not to be too much of a cynic about it, but...
Well, we are anyway, but I want to throw out that obviously trolls exist. You need to be prepared for some blowback by people who aren't as articulate.
Right.
But you can't let it alter your self-worth. You can't let it shake you up so much that you give up the ghost. I'm going to stop writing because I got horrible reviews. I'm not going to finish the story. Yeah, I've seen people do it. I have seen people give up a perfectly good story idea. Okay, maybe it wasn't original, but a perfectly good story idea because people were not reviewing it positively. Oh, I'm not going to continue if I don't get like 300 views on this in the next 3 days.
Right. Ultimately, it's about what you think. Although I guess if you are, that's to say, like if it's professional, don't ignore criticism. But if it's personal, yeah, bro. I mean, if it's personal and like the criticism is really harsh, you have every right to ignore it. It's not.
I was about to say, here's my rule of thumb: if it's about you, it doesn't help your writing, you can ignore it.
Right. That's probably a good idea. You need to get to a point where you shouldn't need feedback. Like I used to be really reliant. I'm a little better.
Why do you need so much of feedback, Donald?
I'm a desperate man who always needs it. I need someone to look at me and say, "Hey, good job." Like I just need that so badly.
Perhaps it's contradictory in concept, but here's something else for you to chew on. You shouldn't need feedback if you're confident enough in your story just to continue it. Your impetus for writing could not be further away from pleasing all your fans because it's about the ideas you want to put down. It's about the ideas you want to put down, not about them.
Right, exactly.
It's why you've toughed through so many years to get this version of Megazoic ready because you still want to tell this story.
Right. Which you have gotten on to me about reviewing it, like redoing it a few times over and over again. But but to be fair, I'm glad I did because it wasn't ready beforehand, and I know it just because I've grown so much as a writer between those installments, and part of it is mainly due to all the not just me growing as a writer from experience, but also just everyone saying like this is what you should do better, this is what you could do better, and such. So yeah.
Well, and the other thing of it too is that when is it fully ready? In our pursuits, I've probably said this before, and I'm sorry for wasting it again, but I feel it needs to be said with this episode that in our pursuits, for you writing and for me music and maybe writing on the side, is that the work we do is never complete. There is no such thing as a perfect story, a perfect performance. We strive for it. We get as close as we can. But by the time that you've put your signature on the final product, the quote-unquote final product, something has changed and you could be better. You could do different, So when you decide to let go is awful important.
Right. Well, I think the reason why I've let go with this one, not just because I think it's the one time it's ready, but also because I have time to actually make it a book. Beforehand, I was about to go to college, or I was in college, and I had to focus on that. Like, now that I'm out of college, like, I can focus on this. And honestly, if I really wanted to, I could rewrite it. But there's no point. At this point, it's done. Like... It's and like especially considering Amazon's reviewing it. So
I was about to say I can't tell you how happy that makes me.
Well, thank you.
You can't see this, readers, but I mean, it's a labor of love, and I get that. But this is now a process. 12 years in the making, right?
Let's see. I came up with the idea. Try 16.
16. Years. Oh God.
This story can drive if it was a person. This story idea in my head could legally drive.
And maybe you understand, listeners, why I was getting on his case so much about continuing to go back to it. But in fairness, it has gotten better each time, exponentially better each time, because of all the practice he gets writing, which is the whole process, right?
Right, exactly.
There comes a time when you have to let go of one story so you can get to another and keep your writing growing. Correct?
Correct.
And if it gets serious, your one story... You need to try and find some more professional editors to glance over that story. As always, more eyes are better than sticking with your own. We have a phrase in my choruses that is, 4 ears are better than 2.
Oh, well, it makes sense in terms of writing. 4 eyes are better than 2. As I know, I have glasses.
I wasn't going to make the glasses comment, but I will say this, that if you are in... sorry, I'm going to change metaphors just a bit and say, if you're in front of a group, an ensemble... and you're trying to guide them, there are some things that you will hear. There are some things that you will not. Because of where you are, because of the position of other people. And so you won't hear everything. That's what other ears are for. Similarly, other eyes are for the purpose of catching things you might miss.
Right.
Just remember, in the end of all this, you decide what to use or leave out, particularly their edits. Because you can't possibly please everyone in your audience.
Yeah, like, don't run the risk of trying so hard to appeal to everyone that you appeal to no one. Like, there's a few kids' movies that try and do that. They're just like, oh, look, here's references to the olden movies. Oh, here's references to the newish movies. Here's a modern reference. Here's an old reference. Here's a love story. Here's an action scene. Here's blah, blah, blah. Like, find a focus.
Well, and,
like,
I mean, some things, if you try to please everyone, you contradict the way things go, you know?
Right.
You have to find a plan and stick to it. But that's an interesting... So if somebody said that to you, which we'll get to that, but how about incorporating criticism real quick?
Mm-hmm. If someone said any of this to me, I'd look out... Like, first off, you gotta figure out how it works into your own plans. You don't just follow criticism blindly, either. Otherwise, it becomes a shell of what you want to do. Like, of what you're trying to do. So you have to find the balance between keeping your vision, but at the same time incorporating their comments, like their
I kind of call it the editor-author model. They're trying their best to help you with your work, but in the end, it is your story.
Absolutely.
We like saying that you should write because you want to, not expressly for the purpose of validating that work you do. Mm-hmm. While it's nice to get some feedback, particularly the helpful kind, learning to accept criticisms is tough, but you can't please everybody, so keep in mind that with writing, the end goal is to please yourself, both in your effort and your ideas.
Mm-hmm. So yes, the end goal is to please yourself, but you have to figure out how to incorporate them. So on the note of figuring out how to deal with criticism, I've got a list of fake reviews for a fake book, and I've not read any of these to you. I've told you a little bit about my plan.
Yeah,
but
I know about the plan, but I don't know the content.
I'm going to read you... Okay, so the book, this fake book, and you're going to be like this fake author of this fake book. Well, not really, but like more like, though, if you got this kind of criticism, how would you deal with it? Like, what would you do? How would you acknowledge it? Would you just ignore it? Would you just move on? Would you try and incorporate what specific things? All right, anyways, here we go. The book is called The Kerfuffle of Blah.
Oh, Lord, lovely title. Okay.
By Mohammed Smith, which is literally a combination of the most common first name and the most common last name of the world.
Mohammed is the most common first... Okay, never mind. Go on.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it is, actually. I was surprised, too. But, to be fair, there's a lot of Islamic people out there, and they like naming it after their prophet. You don't see a lot of people named Jesus. That's more the Hispanic people, and they call it Jesus. Anyways.
Right, because the pronunciation. But anyway.
All right, so here's an example of a great...
Kerfuffle of Blah.
The Kerfuffle of Blah. All right,
so this is a review now, right?
This is a review, and this one is like, I'm going to go descending scale of what they think of the book.
Oh,
so
Lord.
This is a positive review, way too positive, okay?
All right.
OMG, The Kerfuffle of Blah is the most brilliant, hilarious, suspenseful, romantic, thrilling, tragic, witty, ironic, intellectually stimulating, fun for the whole family explosion fest I've ever read in this year or any year. I will never again read such a work of art, and I personally recommend we go to the Louvre, take out the Mona Lisa, throwing it into a burning dumpster, and replace it with a copy of Mohammed Smith's instant classic. Shakespeare who? How would you respond if you got a review like that? First off, I'd say
you can hear my laughter. That's... Wow. First of all,
I'd wonder who was bribed.
It wasn't bribing, but I was thinking, God, did he even read the book? I think half of those genres don't go together.
Well, keep that in mind for the later ones. Kind of a joke I have is that we have no idea what kind of genre the Kerfuffle of Blah is.
Well, with the title like The Kerfuffle of Blah, I mean, come on. But I guess, the best thing to take from something like that is that, there are people out there who will get so manic about it. They're going to get so fanatic.
Yeah, you're going to get the fanboys and fangirls that are
you will.
too rabid sometimes.
I mean,
might.
At least this guy was pretty articulate. I had to point out that the word choice of Mohammed Smith... No, excuse me, Mohammed Smith is the author. The word choice of the reviewer was fantastic. Considering the people who are normally like that can't spell... it's a pretty good step in the right direction, I guess.
Well, yeah.
But
this is a very articulate
very articulate, crazy fan of this crazy book. But here's the thing, you can take encouragement from the fact that he is so positive about your work, but really, there's nothing you can do to make the work better, right?
Right. And I would look at this and be like, don't expect everyone to be like this. Don't get a big head from it. Enjoy it, but don't get it too full of yourself. If you
think that's a realistic criticism, then you've got a very, very large readjustment to make on your views of criticism, because this is like sugar-coated to the max.
Right.
I mean, he didn't say anything substantial about this book did not do this well. It did everything well, which means
we'll get on to that. So
all right,
I don't want to get too on to each one. So the next one, the good but not great review.
Okay.
The Kerfuffle of Blah is a good debut for first-time author Mohamed Smith, with interesting world-building and a surprisingly immense cast of generally likable characters. However, the plot is admittedly rather formulaic, and it spends too much time of its third act setting up the sequels and spin-offs. There's plenty here to enjoy, though, and I'm interested to see where he takes the follow-up set to release next year, The Hullabaloo of Blah.
I never would have thought that a good title could come using blah as part of it, but I think you've managed. Anyway.
I try.
You try. But my idea for that one is that he gives you one major piece of advice that you could use. If you
a couple.
Well, okay,
there's two.
The one that comes
the formulaic
to my mind,
one, and then the other one about the sequel.
Well, okay, but here's the thing, and we've talked about how most writing is just combining old ideas together in a different way.
Well, that's why we say this is why we're going to rip this off, because everything is a rip off of something else. That's the joke.
So if it's formulaic, I mean, some of that you might be able to change, but realistically, if it means that you're altering the major part of the story, which this is already published theoretically. That you can't really change that. But you could, if you wanted to revisit that third act, spend less time being obvious about sequels. Maybe don't be so grand in your plans, because for right now, you have to make sure the first one sells well before you can get to the next one. I'll say this, and this is more back to Donald's work with Megazoic, is that he doesn't obsess over the fact that there's going to be a sequel. Because
there is a sequel hook at the end.
There is.
Spoiler
but
alert.
He needs to make
Spoiler
sure
alert for if you haven't read it yet, which you haven't.
He needs to make sure that the first one is successful before he really gets too far into a sequel. Because otherwise, writing it is not a waste of time, but perhaps an unfinished story just waiting to happen.
Right.
And so here's the thing: if you have all these grand plans, a plan means nothing unless you can actually write them. I have a ton of stories that I've thought of doing that are basically character bios and episode summaries, and then they go nowhere. What good does that do? So why set up a sequel hook as if they're all connected when you're not even writing them?
Right. I feel like, though, if you're writing a big series and it's like each book is more episodic than just there's one tale then the next tale, whatever, which we might talk about in future episodes. But the point is, like, you can probably end it slightly open-ended, as long as you're aware, as long as that's the intent. But it seems like with this one, the way this review is to it, it seems like it seemed like could be a good first installment, but then at the end he's like, I'm not really focusing on this one much anymore. I'm going to set up all the sequels of the spin-offs of the Blah universe.
Right. It seemed like he was going
Blah
too big,
verse.
too fast, kind of a thing. Well,
speaking
I
of which,
I shouldn't say too fast because it was in the third act as opposed to like this first. But
the whole thing about too much, though,
is
in this next review.
All right.
The negative yet helpful review.
Oh, sounds like a good one.
Debuts come in an infinite spectrum of quality. On one end, some of that are like of Jesus' birth in Bethlehem. And on another, some are like that of Stephanie Meyer's Twilight. Unfortunately, Mohamed Smith's debut novel, The Kerfuffle of Blah, falls closer to the latter end. The opening battle scene lasts far too long, and the countless will there won't they subplots drag it down in the dirt, leaving little room for us to care about an otherwise rather interesting plot twist that, in a better work, would have knocked our socks and shoes right off. There's potential to be found here, but Mohamed Smith needs to figure out what kind of author he wants to be and hammer it down. Quite frankly, The Kerfuffle of Blah tries too much at once.
Yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable. And this guy gives a lot of things that could actually be better. He talks about the will they won't they subplots, and what was the thing right before that?
The opening battle sequence.
Opening battle was too long.
I thought it was a funny idea to imagine this book called The Kerfuffle of Blah has a big opening battle
Well, I
sequence.
mean, it is a kerfuffle, so that makes sense.
Oh, there you go. It seems more like a catastrophe if it's a battle scene.
No, kerfuffle could refer to a battle. But
okay.
But anyway, if the battle sequence is too long, is there things that you can take out? Are there things you can take out of it? Is there a way to make it more concise? That kind of a thing. And a lot of the tips that this guy gives are helpful. That said, this is not nearly as negative as it could be. Yeah, he compares, he puts Jesus' birth on one end and Twilight on the other, which I'm not sure what that says about Twilight, but
that was the joke. It's worse.
I know.
It's not just... Okay, anyways.
Near the other end. But, it's one of those things that he was still very articulate, and so a lot
Speaking of which, Stephanie Meyer, if you're what worked to me, I am very much interested. Please don't let this is all done in the name of comedy. Another again being like
cover your kiss assing tendencies.
I need to repair my bridges before I burn them completely.
But so it's one of those things that try and take those criticisms to heart. He brings them from a good place. He's pretty negative, but he does talk about the potential. It's not like he's saying, "Oh, there's no point, just start over."
Right.
So
and,
you can.
Well,
use
I kind of
the
figured
stuff
that this
he
book.
says.
I kind of figured this book already is out, so it seems more like take the sequel. Whenever this guy writes the Hullabaloo of Blah,
right.
he needs to figure out how to incorporate these criticisms and improve upon the predecessor. There's
True.
always there's a lot of times where like a first book can be but then the second book can be amazing.
And the
not just
other
with books,
thing
but like
is,
with
and
anything.
especially this guy hit the nail on the head, and by saying that he's trying to do so much at one time. You need a plan, a more concise plan. If it branches out into a couple things, you need to rein them back in. The subplots, unless it's becoming important or you're seeding it on purpose so it looks like a subplot, but it's really a major plot point for next time. Those things need to resolve. You can't get too far afield of your original plan. And it sounded like Muhammad Smith didn't really have one, which is why this guy and the other guy was saying all those different genres, right? The really positive one. Because there is no one way to go. There are too many ways to interpret this, and you have to make sure there isn't too much room for interpretation because it's going to screw up your vision a little bit if you have a ton of different reads on the exact same material.
Okay. That definitely makes sense. All right, so one more. This is the unabashedly negative review on the complete opposite side of the first one.
All right.
Well, at least now it'll be a long time before I run out of toilet paper. The Kerfuffle of Blah by Mohamed Smith is such a travesty. Calling it bad is an insult to other bad things like slavery and world hunger. This book's existence, I feel, is enough justification for a nuclear apocalypse, because we honestly deserve to burn in radioactive fallout for allowing this abomination to surface. To quote legendary radio star Garrison Keillor, this book's main flaw is that the print is legible.
Wow. Way to use that quote, by the way. Anyway.
Yeah, thank you. I had to give him credit, because that's too good of a thing. I don't want to take credit for it.
You can't take it away from him. But, with that kind of criticism, it's obvious that
he has some sort of beef that's not reasonable.
Right. He has some sort of illogical, hatred for it. And so, you can't let that get you too far down. Just like the positive one, you can't let it get you too far up. You can't let this bring you into the depths of, I don't want to write the Hullabaloo of Blah anymore.
Right, but just like the first one, see, in the first one, you shouldn't really take it too much to heart, but at the same time, you should relish in the fact that, this guy really likes it. For this one, I think, based on the fact that he gives he gives no way to improve it, just bashes it, bash it. I think, I want to see if you agree, it'd be okay to just throw this one away. Use this review as toilet paper. He's bringing you nothing. It's clearly unreasonable. There's no, I feel like sometimes there's a review that you should just completely ignore. They're uncommon, but I think this might be one of them.
If they exist, then it'd be that type, I think.
Right.
It's definitely so negative that it doesn't address... It's definitely negative enough that it doesn't address anything about the story itself. It just says, this is literally bleep. This is literally being used to wipe my bleep.
See, at least you censor yourself, so...
Well, I was going to laugh because I was kind of hoping that this guy would say how many pages the Kerfuffle of Blah was.
Just enough that it'd be a long
comment that he would never run out of toilet paper. But
I said it would be a long time before he run out of toilet paper. I mean, there's an epic battle scene at the beginning, so...
Not too long, but anyway, But... Yes, there really isn't much you can take out of this one. So you just kind of have to, not start over, but, move past it and get to a fresh point.
But in terms of, taking these comments, we should get probably more into... I just thought it'd be a fun idea to take these fake reviews and see how you respond. I just always try to keep things fresh,
Yes. Lysol is a great thing. But anyway...
Absolutely. Oh, my God. Anyways. Oh,
so, that was a lot of talk about other people reviewing, maybe professionals editing your work, but there's something very important to be said about this phase of the process, and that is editing your own.
Yeah, implementing all the comments and such, basically. Or not all of them, but just the ones you think you need.
So, you have to make sure that you take those things and decide, do I want to do them? Will it stick with my vision or not? The one unfortunate thing about having a co-author or multiple is that you sacrifice, you compromise, because your vision has to share with theirs. And so sometimes sometimes it becomes an idea better than yours, but sometimes you just don't like the idea that they come up with and nobody wants to do yours. Right. So an editor is a collaborator, and it's a collaborator of the best kind. It's somebody who's legitimately trying to help, but not forcing you to alter what you think should go.
Like, that's the thing that my professional editor said as well. Like, ultimately, all these edits, as long as they're not like the typos, whatever, all the things she's suggesting, it's entirely up to me whether I want to do them or not.
Right. So with editing your own work, there are 3 things to remember. Your writing gets better as you proceed, and matching tone throughout the entire work is a good challenge. Number 1. Yep. Number 2, don't be too embarrassed about typos or basic mistakes that you glossed over. Just make sure you fix them.
Right.
Number 3, the power of drafts is incredible.
And we've talked a little bit about this before, but like, just the first draft, just make sure, just treat it like you're the only one who will ever read it. I think that's a good way to go by, anyways.
That's it. Well, I mean, it depends on how.
Except for the editor, of course.
It depends on how much practice you've had. If your first draft is pretty high quality, then you don't need to worry about that as much as if you're just starting.
But you should still have an editor, right? But
yeah. But at the same time, don't get too hung up on constantly editing your own stuff, the stuff before, so you never write the next part.
Right.
I have to confess, there's a story that I've been working on for several years.
This is a confession sort of stand, after all. How many times has it been since your last confession?
Since I'm not Catholic, way too long. But anyway, so
it's not, maybe last month. Let's say last month when we did the last episode.
Sure. I don't remember, but when with one of my original, I think it was one of the first Ranger fics that I came up with, and it was this idea of mixing Egyptian mythology with powers and in random place in Montana, which is made up, and a bunch of, and like all of these things. Well, it has been a ridiculously long time since I started it, right? And I have this major opening saga trying to set up all the characters, and heaven forbid it's like the script format equivalent of an info dump.
In other words, your opening battle sequence is far too long, right?
An episodic format. And so originally it was like, I want to say the first time I wrote it, I had like 6 parts, but like the parts themselves were shorter. Even though normally I tend to go long on any chapter, which I'm bad at that too. But like, I wrote the first 6 and I'm like, all right, I'm finally done. I can finally get on to the next stuff. Except by the time I got to the 6th, I was like, oh, but the first one needs work.
Isn't that always how it is?
And so I got to I got through this. I got through the next part and started writing the continual stuff. But I stopped writing the continual stuff because I'm like, well, I really need to rewrite the first part of it, make it shorter, so it matches the tone of
this. Yeah, this is a trap that a lot of writers fall into. I think I'm a terrible English major. There's this one famous author with a famous book that I don't remember, but they wrote the first chapter, like, I think it was like 30 times, and this was back in the world of typewriters, by the way. So.
Oh, God. Talk about an overfull trash basket. But anyway.
And apparently, according to someone that I also don't remember who's read this book that I don't remember, the first chapter isn't even that good.
31 times later.
Which I guess could be a valuable lesson to this. Don't get too hung up on it, because it probably doesn't even need it. You probably get so worried about it that you inadvertently make it worse.
Well, I don't know about inadvertently making it worse, but it's not like it guarantees to make it better. Just focus on getting through the next part of the story, you know?
Right.
I mean, matching tone across the whole work is difficult, because you do grow as you go along. The characters change. Well, the characters should change. Your writing should change for the better, but your characters should change anyway, especially in episodic format. And so it's one of those things that I never got to the next part. Like, I am still stuck on episode, I think, 12 of Ferngully, and 5 of that is the opening sequence. And it's been like 7 years or something.
And it's been about 10 years since you've started it, right?
Well, I don't remember when I started it exactly, but it's been a long time. So, I mean, that's exactly the point here. It has a lot of promise if I could ever get out of my own butt and move on.
As we said, you gotta let go of your crap filter.
Well, I don't know about the crap filter, but you have to stop trying to edit it before you keep writing. That's something I mentioned when we talked about Nano. I think we did that in episode 3 as well.
We reference episode 3 a lot. These are companion episodes, these two.
Apparently.
This is episode 6, so whenever we write episode 9, when we get to episode 9, we'll have to talk a lot about this one, right?
I guess so. But it's one of those things like, if you have your editor on the whole time, you'll just pause most of your progress. It's not to say you won't go on unless you really care about it, but, you get in your own way. Just go. Deal with the edits later.
Right.
Maybe that's not worth editing. I think that's what I found out about Fair Storm. If I hadn't rewritten those 6 episodes down into all 5 of the new ones, maybe I wouldn't be stuck on episode 12. Maybe I'd already be through episode 30 because I'd be
maybe you would be finished with it.
Maybe.
No, you're never
I doubt it.
With it.
I doubt it. I don't know if I'll ever finish it, but you can't
make it so that when you die, your last thing you ever do is write the
end.
People of Fair Storm lived happily ever. Happily ever what? Happily ever what, David? What? Oh, we'll never know.
We'll never know. But no one has.
And then you'll hire
the beauty of the. And then they'll hire somebody in my will. It'll be like, oh, write that one.
It better be
me,
me,
please.
And then I'll do it, and they'll be, oh, okay.
Hey, I'm younger than you. There's a chance you're dead.
Okay, well, here's the go. All right, so if it is me, I can write. All right, they all Family Store live happily ever after. Done. Okay.
Yeah, done.
Easiest.
I finished it. Easiest cleanup I've ever done. But anyway,
man.
But those 6 episodes, the opening segment, that was a draft.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I shouldn't have made it into one draft, but the beauty of drafts, no one has to see the first one if you don't want them to.
What, like I said, so, yeah.
I mean, you're capable of hitting the reset button on any draft you choose until it's finalized and bound. Maybe some literally, maybe others metaphorically. So, if you care about that kind of thing, just to see how you've progressed, then you should back up every draft. Otherwise, you don't need to.
Yeah, I'm getting better about that. Like, I have files on my computer where I keep literally everything, even though I probably look back and I'm like, ugh. But it's nice to have it. It's just nice to see where I've been. You don't know where you're going until you've seen where you've been, as the old saying goes.
You never know what you got till it's gone. That's not quite right. But anyway, I'm curious. Well, you have a note here, so I'm curious to hear what that note is about.
What note?
Right,
yes. Basically, so I basically listed all the different things that I've written, 4 different versions of Megazoic, the one I'm getting now. This is the 4th version, among many others. Others I've attempted, different spin-offs, different prequels, sequels, things I've rewritten.
Those aren't included.
Right, video games. I made video games once. It's not important. Anyways, so no context needed. You can assume that I was a great indie developer or a crappy indie developer, or I worked as an intern at one of the Halo games. Whatever your imagination comes up.
You wouldn't be that. Never mind. Not gonna
2 Well of Tomorrows, attempted 3rd, as we mentioned. And also a lot of different older versions of that, potential rewrites of that I never finished. My God. My library is a mess.
The Wildlife of Tomorrow musical?
All right. See that, on my forum when I said that there's sometimes the people that didn't just kiss my ass. That was one of those times. They were like, "What are you doing, Max? What is this?" Except for you. You were like, "Yeah,
I was thrilled."
Musical.
Well, I mean, come on. I'm biased, but anyway.
And when I said I wasn't doing it, you're like, "No, you let us all down, Max."
Yeah. Because I can talk like I'm the royal we. You bet. Anyway. So that's our spiel about editing and getting criticisms and whatnot. If you have any questions, I'm curious, Matt, because you mentioned your website how many times. If they want to ask us questions about individual advice, criticism type things, but if they want us to review their work or whatever, is there a way for them to get in touch with us?
Right, so you usually go to my website, MatthewDonaldCreator.com, and then you click on the contact page, or use your own email system and email MattD, so MattD, for both of us, of course.
Right.
Originally it was just for me, but I guess it can apply to both of us now.
Yeah, hey, weird.
All right,
weird.
At MatthewDonaldCreator.com, and that one's obviously for me, of course. I wonder so again, MattD at MattDonaldCreator.com. You can probably know how to spell com.
I would hope so. Unless it was co.j or something. Anyway.
CAHM, obviously. 2 M's, actually. J.
KAHM, com.
Even though it's
anyway.
out. Okay. I think that's the show for this month.
Yeah, I think that's all we need to do.
This was a doozy. I guess we'll see next month.
We'll figure out what we're doing for next time before
I
next time.
think it's going to be something about world building is what we were talking about.
But you don't need to know right now.
Anyway, we'll get
Anyway,
into it.
just remember, us here at the Writ Wit may not be great, but we know we're better than you.
Absolutely. I mean, except that we might not be. Honestly, I don't mean I might let you in a little secret. This might have all been a ruse. It might be terrible.
What? Nobody told me about this.
Yeah, maybe you should learn to deal with criticism, David.
Oh, that was your get.
He's
so evil.
I'm Matt Donald.
I'm Matt David. Until next time, listeners, thanks for tuning in.
Sayonara. And I'm not the one in Japan.
That's dumb. Why would you do that?